Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Now, Beijing says claims that a Chinese businessman used his links with Britain's Prince Andrew to spy were preposterous after the UK government voiced concerns over the allegations. Ukraine claims the assassination of top Russian General Igor Krylyov in an explosion in Moscow, who was charged in Kiev for the use of chemical weapons. Israeli negotiating team arrives in Qatar amid renewed hopes of a ceasefire for hostage deal with Hamas, about 60 hostages believed to still be in captivity in Gaza. The European Union opens an investigation against TikTok over allegations that the platform was used by Russia to meddle in Romania's now annulled presidential election. And France to impose a nighttime curfew on the Indian Ocean island of Mayotte after it was devastated by a cyclone. Hundreds are feared dead. Red Cross says over 200 of its volunteers are missing. Hello and welcome. We begin with Mozambique, all the latest, where the tensions continue to simmer over the 9th of October presidential election and its disputed result. The Southern African nation is facing its most precarious post-election period since it turned into a democracy 30 years ago. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, has threatened to wreak chaos and disorder across the country if a top court upholds the official election results. The 50-year-old Podemos party leader has also called on his supporters to paralyze the southern African country starting next week. The dispute currently rests with Mozambique's Constitutional Council, which is due to confirm the election results at the least 2 weeks ahead of the January inauguration of the next president. The council said it was working hard to achieve the electoral truth. Last month, the court also ordered the Electoral Commission to justify the discrepancies. Days after the 9th of October election, the Electoral Commission announced that the Frelimo party and its presidential candidate, Daniel Chapo, had won with over 70% of the vote, extending the ruling party's 49-year rule. Chapo will succeed President Filipe Nyusi, who has served 2 terms and will be the first president born after Mozambique's independence in 1975. Now, the closest contender to Chapo, according to the Election Commission results, is Podemos party Venancio Mondlane, who won 20% of the vote. But Mondlane contends a separate count found that he received 53% of the vote, while Chapo was taking only 36% of the vote. Now, the poll result dispute plunged Mozambique into deadly violence. The country has been rocked by unrest in the last 2 months as thousands poured onto the streets. Protesters staged multiple blockades across the country, including those on border with South Africa. Now, these protests were brutally suppressed by the police. At least 130 people have died and hundreds have been injured in the violence. Human rights groups have accused Mozambique's authorities of brutality, using excessive force and live ammunition on protesters. The demonstrations disrupted 2 power plants, blocked mines, and further deepened the crisis in Mozambique, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. While violence unfolded on the streets, opposition leader fled the country, and Mondlane said that his home in Maputo had been surrounded by security forces. Last month, he said that he escaped an assassination attempt in South Africa, where he reportedly sought refuge after challenging the results. In a video posted on a Facebook, Mondlane said that he was in mortal danger after assassins went to his home to try to kill him. Some reports claim that he is now hiding somewhere in Europe. From hiding, Mondlane has been calling on citizens to come together to march in Mozambique. Earlier this month, Mondlane said that he will seize power in January, calling himself the candidate of the people in a Facebook Live. Mondlane announced that he will be sworn into office as the president on the 15th of January. But if he returns to Mozambique, he is likely to be arrested. There are warrants against him on charges that include incitement to violence and crimes against the security of the state. His bank accounts have also been frozen. Mozambique's outgoing president, Filipe Nyusi, had invited the opposition leader for talks. Venancio Mondlane accepted the offer, but set conditions. Now, since his whereabouts are still unknown, he demanded that the talks be held virtually. He added that the agenda should be to restore the electoral truth and to prosecute anyone involved in vote rigging. Mondlane also sought a public apology and compensation for deaths during the protests, as well as constitutional, economic and electoral reforms. He has even sought legal proceedings against him to be dropped. So the ongoing political tensions are further deteriorating the situation in the southern African country. Unrest, violence and political uncertainty have paralyzed Mozambique and hit its economy, which is already in a dire state. Can Mozambique tread to stability, or will the verdict of the Constitutional Court further trigger unrest? Now, for more on this, we have with us Wilke Dias, who is an analyst, observer and researcher of Mozambique's national politics and international affairs. Welcome to First Post.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Now, you have been backing Venancio Mondlane's claims of vote rigging. Can you provide evidence or specific instances that substantiate these allegations? And why do you believe that the official election results lack legitimacy?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. I have asked, you have been backing Venancio Mondlane, the claims of vote rigging. Could you provide evidence or specific instances, particularly that substantiate these allegations? And also, why do you believe the official election results lack legitimacy?
We work on the whole electoral process, and during, for example, in the voter registration or the people registration for the vote day, we saw so many irregularities, not only on this step, but first after that in the date of the vote. So we have evidence of that, all documents, what we said right now. So it's important maybe to the electoral National Commission of Elections to have that information and try to find one way to solve it, because it's not the first time we saw that type of problem. The part of the organization of the civil society work on that subject, have evidence that we have. We saw fraud during this process. We put also that evidence in our social media. If the people need for more information, could go to our social media, because we put all information in real time, what's happening in the ground. But we don't show some type of the preoccupation about that subject from the responsible of the election sector or the other judicial sector to try to solve this.
And Wilke, Mondlane is called to paralyze the country if the top court upholds the election results, has raised concerns about potential unrest. Do you believe that such actions are justified, and what impact could this have on Mozambique's stability and economy?
Paralyzation of the entire country, created so many consequences in our economic sector. We saw, for example, in one day of the borders closed, it created so many damage for our economy. If you have, for example, during the day of the Constitutional Court will say, or will give that results, maybe we will see more problems inside of that process, and created not only economic problem, but I think we created also a social problem. When I said social problems, we saw
Right.
there's some people we want the basic service. Maybe you don't have any access because
Right.
the most part of the sectors are maybe are we saw that polarization. But
Right.
in if you go, for example, direct to the point,
Yes.
or straight to the point, I think maybe the weapon who have the weapon to try to stop this it's maybe it's the
Mm.
government and when I said government I said the president and the other actors because in the most part of the time we saw the police are using the real bullets or
Yeah.
sometimes or the other negative reactions from the government to try to solve that problem. Maybe right now, I
Yes.
think it's the way to find
Right.
another solution to try to solve that problems after or before and after the Constitutional Court
Right.
give that result, and maybe on this week.
Right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us on First Post Africa.
Thank you.
Our next story is from Mali in West Africa. Mali's military government has claimed a big win against the terrorists the country has been fighting for years. Mali army says it has captured a top leader of Islamic State Sahel branch. The man that they captured is Ahmad Dita. Now, the leader of the regional ISIS branch called the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. Now, Mali junta says that Dita was responsible for a large number of violations and abuses of all kinds against innocent civilians. He also sponsored attacks against the Malian armed forces. Now, the army also says it has killed several fighters belonging to the group. It carried out an operation in the Menaka region in the country's east. The army says it recovered various military equipment, including numerous improvised explosive devices during the operation. Now, the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, or ISGS, is an independent subgroup of the Islamic State West Africa province. It emerged in the year 2016. Now, the group operates in Liptako-Gourma region of the Sahel, which includes portions of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And this has since become a hotbed for violent extremism, which has battered all three nations. But it is not just the Islamic State. Several terrorist groups operate in the region today. West Africa has now emerged as a hub of global terrorism. It all started with the Arab Spring and the fall of the Libyan state in 2011, which led to the proliferation of weapons and armed fighters in the region. This influx reignited Mali's separatist rebels, who later aligned themselves with multiple Islamist groups, including Al-Qaeda. The rise of terrorism resulted in a military coup in Mali. After the coup, the rebels split with terrorist groups. In 2013, with a transition to civilian government, they also signed a peace agreement with the new administration. However, Islamist groups took advantage of the deal and expanded their control, not just in Mali, but neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. Then later, during its peak years, ISIS also emerged in the Sahel region. And these terrorist groups have occupied parts of West Africa and are regularly confronting the armies. In the past 3 years, Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali have seen successive coups. The military leaders promised to tackle the security challenges better. They have broken off their anti-jihadist alliance with France and Western partners and have instead turned politically and militarily toward Russia. Now, Russian fighters are active in West Africa, helping the armies to fight terrorists. However, attacks have not decreased. The region continues to be a hotbed of terrorism. In fact, Russian troops have also suffered heavy losses. In July this year, Mali separatists claimed a major win against army and Russia's Wagner group, and they have claimed to have killed at least 130 Mali soldiers and Russian troops in the clashes. Now, deaths due to armed insurgency in West Africa's military-led nations have reached a record high 7,620 in the first half of 2024, which is an increase of 9% compared to the same period in 2023. So while the alliances are changing, extremism continues and the people continue to suffer. And now let's turn our attention to the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country in Central Africa that has dragged the world's biggest tech giant, Apple, into a bitter legal battle. Now, DRC has filed a criminal complaint against the iPhone maker for using minerals that it says are tainted with blood. The Democratic Republic of Congo sued Apple in France and Belgium. It has accused the firm of obtaining minerals through unethical mining practices from the country. Central Africa's DRC is a resource-rich nation. It is a major hub of key minerals like tin, tantalum, and tungsten, and these are called the 3T minerals and are also very essential for making computers and mobile phones. But these minerals are concentrated in the eastern part of the country, which has been an epicenter of fierce conflict for years. The unrest has resulted in mass deaths and displacements. Now, the region comprising of provinces of North Kivu and South Kivu is the site where more than 120 armed groups are active. They also reportedly run some independent mines. The DRC accuses these groups of seeking a share of the region's resources while carrying out massacres. Now, the most prominent group among them is the M23 rebel group, which has been fighting the DRC army since 2012. The group is accused of being backed by Rwanda. According to the United Nations experts, these armed groups, including the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, sustain themselves and buy arms with the proceeds of exports of these minerals. DRC says the competition for these minerals is one of the main drivers of the conflict. Hence, it calls them blood minerals. Now, the DRC accuses Apple of making iPhones through these blood minerals. It says that the tech giant illegally purchases minerals smuggled out of the conflict-hit east into Rwanda. It says in Rwanda their origin is allegedly obscured, so they can find their way into the global technology supply chain. Rwanda, however, denies benefiting from the trade. Earlier this year, DRC had issued a formal notice to Apple, threatening a legal action if it continues with the alleged practice. The tech giant had then responded by saying that it has found no reasonable basis that any mineral in its supply chain is directly or indirectly financed or benefited armed groups in the DRC or an adjoining country. But now the DRC has launched a legal battle against Apple. It has specifically chosen France and Belgium to file the case because of their perceived strong emphasis on corporate accountability. However, the complaints make allegations not just against the local subsidiaries, but against the Apple Group as a whole. Judicial authorities in France and Belgium will decide whether to investigate the complaints further and bring criminal charges. While conflict in DRC ropes in foreign players and big firms, the fighting continues to devastate civilians in the country. The ongoing peace talks between Rwanda and the DRC, mediated by Angola, have been abruptly cancelled. As per the DRC, the deadlock comes over a Rwandan demand that Kinshasa hold direct dialogue with the M23 rebels.
The agreement was practically 99% negotiated and an understanding was reached on the key issues, of which there are three. The first key issue is the disengagement of forces, the second key issue is the neutralization of the FDLR, and the third key issue is the question of the M23 group.
The rebels have again launched attacks against army in the east and have gained more territory. The Democratic Republic of Congo has accused the rebels of unlawful killings. The conflict has not just displaced 2 million people. The humanitarian crisis that it has triggered is depriving DRC of reaping the benefits of its vast mineral wealth. And for our last story today, let's go back to West Africa, where Nigeria has arrested 792 suspects believed to be involved in a crypto romance scam. Nigeria's anti-graft agency arrested 792 suspects, including 192 foreign nationals, in a raid on a building believed to be a hub for fraudsters who lured victims with offers of romance and then pressed them to hand over cash for cryptocurrency investments. The raid and subsequent arrests were conducted in the southwestern city of Lagos, which is the largest city and also the commercial capital of Nigeria. In a post on social media platform X, the anti-graft agency said it had apprehended the suspects on the 10th of December in a surprise operation at their hideout at a 7-story luxury building in Lagos. Now, the luxury building housed a call center, mostly targeting victims from the US, Canada, Mexico, and European countries. The agency also said that out of the 792 suspects, it had arrested 148 Chinese and 40 Filipino nationals, as well as one Pakistani and Indonesian individual. During the surprise raid, in which it seized computers, phones, and vehicles, Nigeria's anti-graft agency also said that the foreign nationals were using the luxury building in Lagos to train their Nigerian accomplices on how to initiate romance and investment scams. It further noted that most of the floors of the building were equipped with high-end computers and SIM cards of local telecoms to perpetrate their criminal activities. But how was this scam conducted? Let's understand. Now, firstly, foreign nationals recruited Nigerians who were proficient in computer skills. Then the foreign kingpins armed Nigerians with desktop computers and mobile devices to target victims online. They then created fake social media profiles for Nigerians to interact with potential victims. The Nigerian accomplices would make contact through social media platforms such as Instagram and WhatsApp. They then seduce the victims online or offer them lucrative investment opportunities. Once the Nigerians were able to win the confidence of the potential victims, the foreign nationals would then take over the actual task of defrauding the victims. The scammers mostly targeted citizens from the US, Canada, Mexico, and Europe. The anti-graft agency also said that after recruiting the Nigerian accomplices through a test, the foreign nationals took the Nigerians through a 2-week induction program on how to personate foreign females in the romance scam chats and to convince the victims to invest in the crypto scam. The agency also accused foreigners of taking advantage of Nigeria's reputation as a haven for fraud to establish a foothold in the country to disguise their atrocious criminal enterprises. Now, Nigeria has said it was collaborating with international partners and would look into potential links to organized crime following this raid. Now, social media users were also quick to comment on the crypto romance scam. One user said such scams were occurring due to the high rate of unemployment in the West African country. Another user commented that the leaders need to create more jobs and build industries to employ the youth. To contextualize, Nigeria has been facing its worst economic crisis in decades. The inflation rose for the 3rd straight month in November. The unemployment rate has been over 4% during the 2nd quarter of this year, underlining the growing criminality in the country. Cyber-related crimes are also growing in Africa, owing to the weak cybersecurity infrastructure and in several countries. Nigeria alone faces a loss of $500 million annually to cyber-related offences. Now, given the scenario and the arrest of the suspects in the raid, it has raised several questions on the situation in Nigeria. How will Nigeria curb the growing cybercrimes in the country? How will the government tackle the issue of unemployment among the youth? This is something that all of us will be watching out for in the coming days. And with that, it's a wrap on this show. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gusheen Garland.